Welcome to Soulful Practices podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Holling Brooks, and over the past 20 years, I have been on a journey of healing and awakening. I'm also a coach and practitioner for clients on their journey of unbridling their true self. The number one question I'm asked is, what meditation or practice will help me reach my goals? While there is no one meditation or secret mantra that will unlock our own awakening, there is a doorway that will lead us there. And that's the doorway of learning and cultivating the skills of self-reflection and contemplation. Each episode of this podcast offers you pocket teachings and practices that you can implement right away to help you courageously connect with living your authentic soul-led life. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Soulful Practices. And so this particular one, I wanted to bring in some of the energy that is currently around us as we are diving in and when this is releasing, which is the equinox energy. So this episode is being released right around the equinox. And for those of you that are in the northern hemisphere, this is going to be the fall equinox, that moment of space and time between summer and autumn. And for those in the southern hemisphere, hello. Thank you for joining us. And you guys are in the in between of going from that beautiful winter weather of going inward, of establishing and thinking and getting ready to start to branch outward into that wood energy of spring. I absolutely love the equinoxes. It might be because in traditional Chinese five element system, we have different rhythms that really are an essence of how we run and how we work. And ultimately, we want to establish ourselves in a well-rounded with all five rhythms, but some of them are kind of our hub where we come back to. And the earth element, which is associated with the solstices and the equinoxes, the space in between, the moments between the different cycles, the different rhythms, the different energies, to come home, to go into the pause and the stillness, and to really reflect, to honor, to be with ourselves so that we can move into that next phase well. And the earth element is all about nourishing ourselves, bringing us the support that we need. Think of like what earth does. It provides us with that grounding rod, that support. It reminds us to work with the rhythms and the cycles. It also reminds us to have those moments of enjoyment, enjoying where we putting our feet on the ground and where we find ourselves, and to have gratitude and our soul essence with us each and every place that we go, creating that sense of home within ourselves, and also having faith. And that's what the earth element is. So I'm like earth with a little bit of earth with a little bit more earth. And so I think it's one of the reasons why these times speak so much to me. And the space in between those seasons, the equinoxes represent the balance of them, about allowing ourselves to see that there is a balance between, yes, in astronomy, it is that point in which we are in the balance of day and night, right? On either side of the flip side of the seasons, right? And in this beautiful balance of day and night invites us into the metaphor of the balance between yin and yang, helping to remind us that there are seasons of our lives. There's going to be the times of stillness, right? That winter that in the southern hemisphere you have been in. And then there's going to be a time where we're going to want to break out and leave that stillness. Allow ourselves to take roots into the ground and reach up towards the sky, and allow ourselves to begin to grow, to push through that, that grit and that hardship, to have the friction in our life of feeling that movement and creation and striving for what it is we want to create and we're dedicated to. We edited a lot of stuff in that winter months. And so that's what's happening over here. On the northern hemisphere, we are moving from that summer, that energy of out and play and excitement and enjoyment of the different creation cycles. It's come through that beginning stages of birthing itself, and we can actually enjoy and move and dance and connect our creation cycles with another, right? And be in that ebb and that flow and that connectivity and that transformation that happens as our creations actually take shape and we can interact with them and play with them and enjoy them, right? And then as we come into that autumn, That is a bittersweet energy. It is a somber energy and an excitement and celebration energy. It allows us to reflect on the harvest of what we have worked with and created in that cycle. It allows us to bring it in and to experience it, to share the bounty of what our creations have been, to receive the bounty of other people's creation, to be in that beautiful exchange. But it's bittersweet because we know that that creation cycle is also coming to an end. So in autumn, we also start to reflect that we are going to be asked to let go of that which we just created in this beautiful cycle. And we're going to ask to begin anew again. So it's that death and that rebirth process that also happens in that autumn time, and then in that solstice going from autumn to winter as that goes. And so right now we find ourselves in this moment of allowing ourselves to pause. And what I love, and I talk about it all the time, and so sorry if this is something you've already heard me talk about, is that if you kind of do a lot of research and you got to go back quite a ways, you will eventually see, instead of the typical, the five elements being put around in a bit of like a pentagon sign, you'll see it as almost a circle, and the earth element is in the middle. And when I look at that version of the five elements model, when it's displayed, I love that model because it says that in the middle of every season is Earth. In the middle of every movement, of every ebb and every flow and every shift, there is a moment to pause, to reflect, to nourish ourselves with what? The element, the earth element governs our blood. It is our blood, our life force energy, the essence that is within us, right? And as that blood comes in, it is what allows us to literally fuel this beautiful body that we are in. And that blood is represented metaphorically into the life force of us. Well, what's our life force? That's our essence. That's the individual characterisms, the frequency and the light of each and every being, and how those come together into one solid beam of light that has all those fractions within it, right? Like into that idea of all the ocean is made up of little molecules of ocean that bleed into each other, and they both lose each other, and yet they are separate at the same time. And the earth element reminds us of that, that we have our own individual essence, and then we're also part of the greater life force energy. And how do we want to work with those rhythms? And how do we want to work with the pulsing that comes forward in that? And how do we want to connect with that? When we absorb and we work with and we interact with other beings, whether that be creatively, physically, emotionally, mentally, when we interact with different parts of ourselves, we are ingesting, in a way, different experiences and energies and thoughts and ideas. And how then do we sort that? How do we digest down in there what wants to be useful, helpful, allow us to infuse ourselves with the energies that we need to nourish and strengthen and feed that blood within us? And what do we want to release and let go of? And how do we want to metabolize that out and allow our system to reimagine and infuse itself back in? We can get very stuck in what other ideas are, what protective ideas are, and adaptations, and we can forget to take that moment to open to what is wanting to be infused into us, through our original life force energy, not our ego, not our ideas, not our other things. So one of the things I love about equinoxes, and I love to leverage it and just really unbridle it and bring it into my reflections 4 times a year as the equinoxes come in or the solstices come in, is I like to engage in this reflection. And as I was kind of thinking about it, I was like, okay, Michelle, what quote, what pocket teacher do I want to bring forward to really help us explore that we are always in this cycle of creation? Like, what are we moving? How are we moving into that next one? Am I moving from separation? Am I moving from worry? Am I moving from striving to fix? Am I moving with faith? Am I moving with love? And I pick these words, excuse me, still have a bit of a allergy thing happening here. I pick these words because these are the words associated with the earth element. When it's balanced, we are in the ability to enjoy the sweetness of life. We're in the ability to also be in movement with nurturing ourselves, with tending to ourselves, with inspiring ourselves and giving ourselves that foundation that we need to feel like we can stride on out there, right? When it's out of balance, we're stuck in worry. We're stuck in power and control struggles. We're stuck in trying to figure things out and to think and think and think and work so hard to try to bring that in. And so you might have realized that even in this description, I'm describing paradoxes, right? I'm either in trust or I'm in worry. I'm either in like releasing control or trying to control. And that's because our world is based on paradoxes, whether we like it or not. These seemingly imposing polarities within us and our system are really a part of how our mind just is naturally programmed to perceive the world. And it can get very stuck into thinking it's an either this or that kind of a thing. And I think that's what the equinoxes help us remember, especially because they're about balance, right? They're about that still point in between these two waves, these oscillations of this or that, right? And right there in the middle, if you've got a little figure eight pattern going, is a still point, is a place of balance, is a place where both can be true and neither one is pulling at the other. And so when I thought of that, I instantly went to the Tao Te Ching, right? And I went to the beautiful Lao Tzu, who is attributed as being the main author of the Tao Te Ching. And there are many, many great quote verses or chapters that are in there that can bring you a lot of insight into the balance, because that's pretty much what the Tao is all about, is that's the idea that the Tao within us is just the natural rhythm, that universal rhythm that is not trying to lord over us, but it's just an innate, natural, organic part of us. It's guiding us, it's infused in us, it's a part of us. And in verse 29 is the one that I kind of went to. There are a bunch of different translations out there of the Tao Te Ching. I had to pick one, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth between one, but the main one I picked was by Stephen Mitchell. That was in 1988. And so he shares his version of verse 29. I'm going to read it through you. And then in good old fashioned that you've come to know, we're going to kind of chunk it down and look at those different things in the different part, and then come up with a practice at the end that really helps invite us in there. So take a deep breath in and out and just let this kind of bathe over you. It starts with a question, and it's a hard question. Do you want to improve the world? I don't think it can be done. The world is sacred. It can't be improved. If you tamper with it, you will ruin it. If you treat it like an object, you will lose it. There is a time for being ahead, a time for being behind. There's a time for being in motion, and there's a time for being in rest. A time for being vigorous and a time for being exhausted. A time for being safe and a time for being in danger. The master sees things as they are without trying to control them. She lets them go their own way and resides in the center of the circle. Another translation for that very last part is, therefore the wise avoid the extremes, the excesses, the complacency that can happen in either one of these polarities, and instead resides in the center. Okay, let's just sit with this excerpt one more time. I'm going to pull out some little places for us to kind of explore. And take this image of this figure eight, that there are these extremes, these excesses, these complacencies. There's the time for being in motion. We are cued to move into motion, and then that resides, and then it comes back in, and there's a still point. And then we're cued to rest, and then that resides, and we're come back into a still point. Then we're cued to move into motion, into vigorous motion, and then to rest and to be exhausted and to restore. There's a time to be safe, reflective within, and there's a time to gamble, to risk, to step into the fray, and to come back to center. And each and every one of these different times and rhythms of our lives are the natural waves of the quote ups and the downs. So you can take this figure eight whichever way you want. You can put it up and down. You can take it sideways. But this is the wave of the highs of life and the lows of life. And in the middle is this nice calm place, right? Because if you take this wave and you bring it together, if you unlink the figure eight, if you let it come out, it forms back into a circle. And there is no pull and push or Newton's cradle, the one where you take the thing out to the side and it just swings and it just keeps swinging itself back and forth. Man, that's a lot of energy to be lost in those swings. When I'm over in the high, I could get tucked to trying to struggle to hold on to it. I don't want to lose this. This feels so good. I want everything in my life to stay exactly how it is. And it's all this or all that. That's what our mind brings us into. And so then when something changes, when we start to do the Tao, the natural ebb and the flow, and another part of our life might be down here while this part's up here. Excuse me. Then I didn't get a chance to like pause that before that hit. I apologize for that. When that happens, like just like that, I guess that's not even a mistake. Thank you, universe, for helping me bring it in. I can be in this teaching and I also can have something that's not so fun, like a sneeze and an allergy coming on from the seasonal changes, right? Both can be true at the same time. And if I'm holding to one extreme or the other, then I'm in struggle. I'm in trying to hold and grasp. And as it said, if you treat it like an object and we try to grasp it and hold it, we're going to lose it. If we try to tamper with it, oh, I want it to stay here, we're going to ruin it because we're going to miss the cues that says, hey, we need to be in both. We need to find the center and not be super attached. The other thing can happen is then when we find ourselves going into a different place, then we've got to come up with a reason why. Our ego starts to work. It starts to work in this idea of creating a story and justifying either A, why we need to keep it up there, or B, why is this other piece here? It has to have a reason. It has to have a logical reason that, oh, by the way, makes sense to me, right? And fits into my parameters of what I'm seeing. And this verse is saying, yeah, we got to let that go. And how hard is that? Because then we start to see that we've created a story as to why it's, quote, going to the other side, but there's just a time for it. That it doesn't have to have this huge story attached to it. And similarly, if we are stuck in the low, and we just have decided on a protective mechanism to believe that that low is just what life is, that it just is mired down in pain in the storm of life. And we think the storm of life is never going to break. And we get attached to that. Then this too is a falsehood because it's a seduction of the mind, a protective mechanism that really is starting to say, hey, this is all that is. Don't look for anything else. So we're not open to when the system is naturally trying to bring us into a joyful part, a sunny moment, a place that is not mired down, and opportunities to shift into the next cycle, right? And when we blow past those, because we have protective mechanisms in the place, once again, we find ourselves submerged with having to create stories that say the light doesn't exist for me. The joy, the laughter, the moments, even amidst the pain and the suffering, are not there. And so, how then can we start to recognize that these swings are a part of our life? That they are a part of the sacred part of our life, of the universe? And what would it look like if we begin to release our attachments to where we're at and why we're at these different moments of our life? If we stop trying to figure out why we're at the time where this is happening, and instead being like, this is just what is. And so this goes to that last part of that statement, when there's a time for everything, right? The master sees things as they are. I'm in this time, and I'm not going to try to control them. I'm not going to try to say that the place that I find myself experiencing, whether I deem it high or low, good or bad, that's not the bailiwick. This is what is here. And I'm not going to try to control it. And so therefore what? We'd open to love. We'd open to compassion. We'd open to kindness. We'd open to gratitude. We'd open to blessing ourselves in that moment. So she can let go of what is happening and she can reside in the center of that circle. Just feel, what would it feel like to not be tossed around on these waves that are just a natural part of life? What would it feel like to not be burdened with having to justify or understand or explain why you are where you are, and instead just ask, what would bring me balance right now? Right? And what would it do? How would we approach ourselves or another if we notice that we're finding ourselves in a quote low, the ups or the down part of the wave, and we're in the down part? Would we, instead of judging how we got there or why that person is there or why some part of us is there, could we instead quickly open to compassion, to welcoming the grace of what would best support us in that part of our life? Of really being able to step behind the scenes and saying, you know what, I am in a grit moment and a hardship or disease or something is present right now. What would it be like if we could let that go? And I hope each one of these questions is like a prayer in your heart, that our life, our projects, our health, our community, our nations, our world is constantly traveling through ups and downs, a different season for everything. To quote another book, there's a time and a season for everything, right? That one comes from the Bible. So we got two pretty good books here to work from. And if we could release having to justify or have a story attached to why that is, and instead just be with that is there, and knowing that there is grace and support to be with us in each and every part of that, what would that change? What ways would we delete the excess suffering, pain, mental anguish that goes with trying to figure out why we're in a place if it's a low, or to hold on to the place of the high and having to explain if we find ourselves in a low again? And, heck, if we find ourselves in both at the same time, that's really a mind twister in our head, and it really can throw us off into more and more suffering. And so when I feel into these equinoxes times, it's really an invitation for us to pause and say, hey, do we want to release that whole way of being? Can we move beyond that? And can we start to be with that with his presence? And when we try to control the world, when we find ourselves trying to do that, to change the universe, to think we can improve it by it being to do something that we think it should be doing or should not be doing, can we hit the pause button, right? And then can we open to faith, to love, to kindness, to seeking the sacred that is present in that moment? Why? Because it's there, right? And therefore, can we engage with and welcome the support that is present within us to help us deal with whatever that is we are there? And so this really is the key, my friends, to that idea of balance and harmony. And man, did I chase this at first. I had a lot of different ideas of what created balance and harmony. And I was working really, really hard until I finally sat down with this verse and I was like, okay, Tao, what do we got? like help me embrace this rhythm, this natural organic rhythm that you're doing. Help me release this idea that something's wrong, like we've talked about in past episodes, and help me open to then that center, that accepting what is present, coming to center, releasing my judgments, and therefore opening myself up to more empowering questions. That the essence of me, the blood force essence within me, is there and with me, no matter what type of moment I find myself in. And can I release the need to either pull something in quicker or push and resist something from happening? And so as I read this excerpt, I remember back to kind of, it was fun reflection in that was what was bubbling up in me. And as I've worked with this concept with different clients over the years, I can see that this is how we get stuck, right? In that dualistic thinking of I want this or I want that. And I'd love to bring you back into that first part of this chapter or this verse again. And I'm going to bring in a couple different translations because this is where I know I got stuck with some heck of some push me pull me's. So right off the right off the bat, do you think that you can take over the universe and improve it? This is a different translation. Do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? I don't believe it can be done. So that's Lao Tzu saying it back to you, right? Or Zhao, or however you say his name. The universe is sacred. You cannot improve it or control it. And if you try to change it, you will ruin it. And if you try to hold it, you will lose it. So that's that one. Back to the first one I gave you. Do you want to improve the world? This one appeals more to our personal idea of manifestation. The first one, I think, is probably closer to the translation, which is, do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? The kinder, gentler one that came out like 10, 20 years later was, do you want to improve the world? But either way, he answers you back and he says, I don't think or believe that it can be done. The world is sacred. The universe is sacred. It can't be improved or controlled. If you tamper with it or try to change it, you will ruin it. And if you treat it like an object or try to hold on to it, you will inevitably lose it. So it's just you and I here, and we're in this beautiful, soulful conversation. And so I really invite you to lean into this question. Do you seek to fix the world and the universe? Now, there's nothing wrong with this question because I think we all want to help create a world that has more kindness and love and enjoyment in it. But the question is, what is the energy and presence in which we are engaging that pursuit, right? So here's what I know happened for me when I read this one. Of course. Of course, I want to change the world. Of course, I think that there could be things done better. I have some suggestions for the universe that right off the bat, for myself, yeah, maybe some part of me did blah, 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 blah. But as a person who's experienced this, I have some suggestions for the universe. So of course we have that. How often do we believe or desire or think we can improve the universe because we witness the suffering that is within ourselves or somebody else? Like, how often do we wish with all of our heart that we can change a circumstance of our past or what's currently happening to us or what we fear might be happening in the future? Of course we do that, right? And how often do we try to then, because of those first two things, shove a solution into the problem, right? To fix it, to create the change from the point of view that we think will fix what is wrong, alleviate the suffering that we are perceiving and working with within ourselves or within another. So within my own body, like the allergies that are happening to me, how many times might I be able to say, oh, there's this thing, it's happening, this is wrong in my body, and therefore dot, dot, dot. My thought, I shouldn't be thinking that way. That's a wrong thought. That's a limiting thought. That's something that I don't want to have, right? And we get into this push me, pull me, right? This paradox. It's either this or that. Or looking out to a relationship. Somebody shouldn't be doing that in that relationship. That's harmful, that's mean, that's disrespectful, that's this, that's the other. My career should be doing this and not this. My housing should be this and not this. My finances should be this way and not this way. And because of this situation that happened to me 20 years ago, that's why I'm where I'm at. The list goes on and on, out into community, out into nations, out into the world. How often do we just naturally try to hold, desperately hold to an inner part of ourselves or to an outer part of ourselves, which is a moment that we absolutely love. I loved the way I looked and I felt when I was dot, dot, dot. And I want to go back there. I want to create that. Or I love what I am right now and I don't want to have anything ding that. And I'm going to put up a huge wall and a moat and I'm going to protect this fiercely to keep everything as it is. Or to keep this job just the way it is, even though you can feel the rumblings that it's moving in that circle, right? And what does that create? All that striving, all that holding. Or we can feel that the house of cards, so to speak, is coming down and we are trying to desperately hold it together. Or it's crumbled and we don't see any possibility of it coming back. And so now we're stuck. We're mired up, right? I know for me, the answers to all of these questions was, of course, absolutely. I think I can do that. Let me figure out a way. All I need to do, right, is work harder, manifest more, find the limiting belief that's blocking me, make myself into like this huge pretzel that's working all the time. I'm living in the excesses, the extremes, and the complacency, right? And the Tao says, the Tao Te Ching says, hey, a wise woman or man, a wise being would live in the center. Oh, what would that be like in there? What would it be like if I could change the way I'm responding to the situation I find myself in? What if I let go of the label of wrong, of right, of good, of bad? And what if I hang in the middle and just say this is what is? What would change with the way I would then move into movement? I'd have parts of me that, if I acknowledge this, I could say these types of things. I have parts of me that desperately, of course, want to hold on to things. I love them. I never want them to change. I love everything about them. And they're going to change. I have parts of me that are okay then with allowing that change to come in, and parts of me that are saying, well, this change can come in as long as I keep everything I have and stuff that I don't like gets better. Like, of course I'm going to have that part, right? And of course, I'm also going to have this part that says, I want to know that in this beautiful wheel, I have the power to put in there what I want, to manifest my dreams, to manifest my realities, to manifest the different things. But then what we're doing when we do that one is we're forgetting, where'd that dream come from? Where'd that inspiration come from? That came from within us. That came from our essence. That is a part of our ebb and our flow, right? And so when I start to feel in and I allow these extremes, these parts of me that are in the struggle, and I just welcome them and I say, of course you're there. Of course there are parts of me that want to change things for the better for myself and for others and alleviate suffering. Of course there's parts of me that would love to say, I can take these potential minefields out and the suffering out of the future. And yet I need to release my attachment to it. Because these are all parts of me that think they can control the world and change it for better for myself, right? And they're forgetting that we're already included in that whole, in that ebb and that flow, in that sacred, right? And so this chapter invites us to release some of these attachments and instead embrace this idea that the universe, this is a hard one, so stay with me on this one, is perfect. So therefore the universe within me, the highs and the lows, the incredible pain and suffering, and the incredible joy and amazement is all perfect just as it is. Okay, so if we even entertain this idea, now what? Okay, fine. What does this look like in motion? It looks like a ton of pauses because our mind is going to try to move faster than this beautiful ebb and this flow energy, right? Our mind thinks if it keeps us quick, if it keeps us responding and moving, it can get ahead of this. It can somehow redirect us back to the top side of this, or just get us to be complacent with the bottom side of this thing, these ups and these downs of this wave, right? It thinks that it can allow us to really begin to strive, to fix, to avoid. However, what does this look like in motion as we come into the pause? The first thing it asks us to remember is that the wave, the experience of wherever we find ourselves in, is sacred. It has an intelligence within it that is bringing forward whatever it needs to help us work with that moment for the highest good and benefit of all. And so it has within it stillness, being, and movement, doing, striving, creating, releasing, all the 10,000 things, so to speak, all the different rhythms are a part of the whole picture, and together create this beautiful balance and harmony, that yin yang symbol, right? So in the yin, there is stillness, there's honoring, there's reflection. There's a willingness to just be and to breathe. And then just as that in breath comes in and there's a still point and that out breath goes out, there's the yang, there's the movement, there's the creation, there's the container, there's the striving, right? As that energy, in that springtime energy that reaches for the sky and puts roots down into the ground, right? The autumn time that says it's time to release the leaves and to go inward and to go to still and into restoration, right? Both of those are valid and true, and they're both a part of it. And guess what? That's going to happen whether we give our input or not, because it's part of the divine and it's part of the organic rhythm that is the Tao. So stay with me here because I am coming to a practice. And so the working with balance really then invites us into releasing our attachments to the ideas of what we think our life should be, what it has been, and the stories that we've created to allow ourselves to find peace and stability within that, right? Of however we have figured out to deal with the sacredness of the ebbs and the flows when we didn't feel connected to our own essence, that heart, the blood of us, right? And within each and every one of us is that inspiration, that essence that will guide us to step into motion, right? To create a new project, to have a new idea, to change a circumstance, to allow ourselves to create a new way of interacting with what is. That inspiration that's going to bring us into more joy, more laughter, more abundance, all those things, that is right there if we slow down and we give it to us. And then also what is right there is the guidance that lets us know what parts of us need when we find ourselves in the quote down part, right? What needs to be tended to, the fears, the worries. This guidance is a natural part of each and every one of us, and it cues us continuously to meet whatever moment we find ourselves in. It is the ego, it is the mind, it is the protective mechanisms that whisper to us, that try to dictate to us what we think we should be doing with those tides, what we think we should be allowing another to do with their changing tides, what we think we know we need to do to fix the tides, to get them back on track, right? And on all the essence of what we're doing is jumbling up and missing the insights, the inspiration that helps us perfectly customly work with that moment that we find ourselves in. And so we are beings of perpetual motion. Therefore, if we don't consciously create the pauses, the space in between, which I love about the original ways in which I've been able to see the makeup of the five elements thing with the earth in the middle, because then it says, hey, every season, come here, bring the pause in, right? And let that be the center, the hub, the root, the balancing factor that allows us to be able to meet life on life's terms and dance with it and cry with it and allow ourselves to create an alignment with that which our soul is guiding us to truly be. And it's beautiful questions that we can ask ourselves in the pause, like, what do we need right now? That's such an earth question. What do I need right now? That in itself is a practice, right? And we're going to go through, oh, I need $1 million, or oh, I need this and I need that. And then we're going to settle down. What is it that I need right now? I need more compassion for myself, for where I'm at. I need more pauses. I need more inspiration. I need to bring in some inspirational pockets for myself, either through quotes or ideas or music or exercise or walking, like whatever it is, right? What and how does my soul want me to engage this moment? That's a beautiful question. It's not asking me to think of what I should be doing in this moment and saying, hey, soul, what is it that you would like me to bring forward, to experience, to engage with right now in this moment for the highest good and benefit of all? I just heard to laugh, to sing, to be in that moment, to ask the question of what would really be beneficial for me right now. I know what my tribe is telling me. I know what parts of me are telling me. Help me sort this. What would really be most serving for me right now? What is wanting to be unwound, tended to, changed, shifted, released, so I no longer carry it with me right now? What wants to be created, expressed, awakened in me right now? When we find ourselves engaging in motion, in action, and choices that we are just perpetually doing without the pause and the reflection of those questions, those beautiful soul-led questions that I just shared with you. When we do that, we are going to have a moment where we pause and we realize we are way off course, right? We are creating and moving in habitual ways that are taking us further and further out. And they're not matching who we truly be, and they're not helping us co-create in harmony and balance within. So one of the very first things that I do with clients, because usually when clients come to me, they've, I'm hoping to change this, by the way. I want to just throw that out there to the universe, but I accept wherever I happen to be. When clients usually come to me and knock on my proverbial door or my physical door, if they're local to me, is they've tried everything else. They've been everywhere. They've found some of the most amazing, beautiful supports and interventions. They've moved the needle a little bit, but then they haven't been able to get them. And they're really, really, truly looking for that deep healing. They're looking for that wellness, that holistic wellness. They're looking for balance. They're looking to unleash like abundance of health and wellness and vitality and loving their job. You know, they want the joy. Right. The other podcast that I have is part of a membership, and it's called Connecting with Joy, and it's a private membership community that I have online, and that's it, right? Like we're looking to infuse ourselves with the ability to access more joy and to connect with the joy that is presently within our life, and that becomes the focus. Well, naturally, of course, that becomes the focus, and one of the craziest hard things that I ask clients to do, some make it through, some it's just not the doorway that they're ready to walk through yet, is that I say to them, hey, guess what? I know you want this done like now. And I know you just want the bippity boppity boo, let's fix this. Give me the mantra, give me the pill, give me the this, give me that. Tell me what tapping, what pieces to hold. You tell me what to do, Michelle, I will do it. You know, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that they're dedicated and devoted to freeing themselves from the moment that they find themselves in. And I give them a little heads up. I was like, hey, guess what? I don't believe in fixing. That's not actually what I think healing is. I think healing is remembering our wholeness, finding the reality that that circle is there and we're in the middle. And we're going to start to befriend the system instead of going at war with it. We're going to start to ask those parts that feel lost or angry or irritated with how they're manifesting in the body or in the mind or in the stuckness that we find in relationships or career or whatever it is that brought that person through my door, right? And I'm going to ask them to lean in, to dialogue, with those fearful parts, those grippy parts, those overwhelmed parts, the detached parts, to say, no, nothing to see here, keep moving, thank you very much. I'm going to ask us to sit with them together and to let them lead us. And as we start to do that, I also want to explore what other parts of you are there too. The ones that are experiencing some type of happiness, but we don't want to acknowledge it. You know, they don't want to be the kid that's like, oh my gosh, I got an A, when all the other friends are like, I got a C, I got a D, you know, like the one they don't want to, they feel like they can't show up in our lives. And I want to create a sacred space for them too, to feel that joy, that excitement, that inspiration, the parts of us that want to grow and dream beyond the place that we find ourselves. I want to befriend and welcome and nurture those parts too. And as we begin this dance, this ebb and the flow of allowing all parts of us to feel welcome, it's going to start to guide us. It's going to create a space for true choice, the ability to be in center, to witness all the different aspects of us from whichever side they're at, and to hear the whispers of the Tao that can be present and to be partnered with, and to let those whispers move us into what intervention, what way of working with it, how to bring balance and wholeness forward from the direction in the system versus me saying, this is the point to hold, right? Or this is the mantra to use, or the sound healing tone, or whatever intervention that's in my beautiful toolbox as a healing practitioner, right? And this approach is very different because it says, I'm not trying to change the imbalances. I'm not trying to change the storm or the fears or the blocks. I know that when it's time, if I am listening, if I am in the stillness, if I'm available to connect with the guidance that's coming from it, it's going to show us how to unwind. It's going to show us how to shift. It's going to show us how to release, because nothing wants to be stuck in any of the excesses or extremes or complacencies. It all wants to come back to center, right? And man, oh man, does this sound really good when you're not in the throes. But when you're in the throes, this sounds like, no thanks, can I have a pill that gets me out of here? So I get it. It's a hard sell, right? But it takes faith and it takes trust in the system. And sometimes it takes the guide who can hold that for you while you're just learning the ropes of how to use these types of skills, right? And how to be in that center. To have somebody who's like, hey, I'm over here, come find me, right? And so in this traditional Chinese 5 elements model, the meridians that are within it of the earth element is stomach and spleen. And so I thought it would be really fun for the practices for this week to invite you into a somatic based practice of a conversation. To do that, I have to do a small sidestep to teach you about how to work with somatics. I think I've done it before in the past, but hey, it's always good in case somebody's finding the standalone. Somatic exercise, somatic just means the body. And how does the body talk? The body talks through sensations. And what are sensations? A tightness, a stillness, and a quiver, an idea. And the beginning of working with somatics is kind of hard because we poo-poo the body. We don't listen to it. It's this thing that happens to hold up our head and we walk and let our head move around, right? And it's this thing that maybe looks good, maybe gets us exchange, you know, like all these other things. But the idea that it's a sacred messenger can take a little bit of practice. And so one of the things that we want to do with somatic exercise is start the conversation, allow the body to catch up to that we're actually asking for its input, having pauses, inviting the conversation back in, another pause, and inviting that conversation back in again. And it kind of allows it to go through all the waves, right? So I like to work in patterns of 3. Everybody's already seen me doing this. And I also like to work in patterns of looking at ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, right? I like to work through what is happening in or around my body being right now, what is happening in or around with my thoughts. If they had a little thought bubble, what would that look like? What is my heart saying to me? Am I sensing, feeling, seeing, hearing, and there? And then out to the soul. And so One of the things you can do to access the body through the 5 element system is like tapping on meridian points or pressure points, beginning and end points, or specific points within the meridian. I can't do a whole teaching right now, but stomach starts right here under the eyes and actually is like in the eye socket, which, that would really suck to tap. So we're going to come to the next point right under the eyes. And we're not acupuncturists here. We're not using needles. We're just using our hands to start a conversation. So just really notice what it feels like to even bring your hands to your face. Don't like start doing things and tapping and making something happen or whatever, like just bring it. You might find that you don't even want to get your hands all the way to your face, right? They might want to come all the way to the face. Maybe they just naturally want to kind of like stretch the skin. Maybe they want to pinch it, like little soft little fairy pinches. Maybe they do want to tap or kind of massage, like, oh, wow. Hmm. Whatever it wants to do. And then just soften. And let these words start to kind of flow in. And if when it comes back to it, that's fine. You can move your hands back and forth, however it is. Am I willing to pause, to reflect, to create the sacred container? Because that's what the stomach is a container to just hold, soften, begin to prep the system for what it's going to work with, right? It allows it to hold it, to reflect, to soften that which is interacting with. Am I willing to create that container so that I can move out of worry and into trust? Move out of just doing, and welcoming a stillness and giving permission to my system that that stillness is a place of strength. Now, right there, your body might be having an answer for me. It might be saying, heck no, Michelle, this is not safe. It might be saying, oh, thank God she's slowing down, or he's like, oh, he's finally like willing to allow us to take some more measured steps versus just plow, right? Like whatever it is, just notice it. And now we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to go to the spleen beginning and ending point. So the beginning point is the inside of the toe. You can either reach down there and just kind of rub the inside of the big toe, inside meaning medial, into the interior of the body. Or you can come right to this point right there on the side of the body. You can hug it. You can come to the side. Kids love to do this one because it's like a little, like a monkey, like, putting that in there. And this question, after we kind of stimulate that, if they're sore, they're right in about the middle. Again, we're not using, so you can rub up and down the whole like flanks of the side of your body. If that feels good, you'll get there. You'll get it. And then we're just going to ask that question of, do I welcome insights from the essence of me to guide me, to help me work with wherever I find myself, as a way to metabolize that? Or am I stuck in my ego mind, cutting off myself from that beautiful essence of trying to figure things out? That would be the worry energy. And so just pause and go quiet. I like to take my hands kind of off any points that I'm working. Just see what's there. Write it down. We're going to come back again to under the eyes, just once again. Whether it's tapping lightly, massaging, just hovering over top of it. Can I shift from thinking I need to be on one side of this wave or the other to be, quote, good? A good light worker, a good boss, a good family member, like to be a good person, somehow I'm supposed to be only on the upside of this. And then to the spleen. How would it shift if I change my relationship with those needs? If I started to allow myself to be worthy no matter where I'm at in my body, my life, my mind, in that cycle, in those different times. Go ahead and pause, go into the stillness, see what might be shifting or changing in and around your body. What new thoughts are coming in with these questions as you're engaging your body in this dialogue? Nice deep breath in and out. And now we're going to look at what I call the how would you like to step into motion? This is opening to that guidance. We've done the reflective part, right? We did the pause. We gave ourself permission to pause. We've done a little bit of reflection. You can ask any type of questions you want in here, but in the interest of time, I just picked two. And now we're going to start to say, how can we support ourselves with those questions that we just asked? Of what would it look like if I started to shift the way I hold myself as worthy? What movements would that start to create within me? So back to the eyes, right under the eyes, tapping again. So for me, right off the bat, I'm noticing that I'm welcoming that touch more. I'm even moving into it and allowing it to kind of sink in a little bit deeper, really exchanging, giving and receiving of that energy from my hands. So that's new right off the bat. That's pretty awesome. And so what suffering can I now release? I've been holding. Remember, stomach is holding. What suffering, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, can I release now in this moment that I do not need to travel with into the next cycle? What can I trust that my body knows how to metabolize out? And then to spleen, I'm just hugging myself because that feels really good. That's the way my body wants to work with it. I ask for help. I open to help. I welcome help to embody that I am full of paradoxes and that parts of me can be happy and sad, parts of me can be in rest and stillness, and parts of me can be in exertion and motion. And the guidance is there to help me meet every step of the way. I open to it and I welcome it. Nice deep breath in, and out, and wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Hand over the heart if that feels good to you now. So this is the intention, that this week I let go of the need to live in the extremes, in the excess, in the complacency, and open to residing in the center. Allowing this attention to guide my attention to the moments where I find myself engaging in false expectations of what I should be or shouldn't be doing, of false expectations that somehow I should be able to eliminate all pain, all hardship, that bottom half of that circle. Disappointment, dis-ease from my life. And if it's in there, that means I did something wrong, right? Can I let that go? Can I let go of when I find myself discovering that I'm engaging with my life, with what is present, with what is happening, through trying to control it, to shoving in, those experiences that I think should be there for myself or for another. I would like my attention to be guided to the moments in which I find myself really engaging in fix-it mode, right? I know the answer and I'm going to get in there, I'm going to change something, and I'm moving in motion without any pauses, without any stops, half halts, full stops that really allow me and give myself permission to engage in the stillness. And from that stillness, allow the insights to come forward through that whole list of beautiful questions I said before. Pick one that works for that one so that I can then move into actions that match my soul. So I'm asking for Reiki energy this week to help guide and flow my engagements the way I utilize my life force energy this week to seek the stillness, to release my attachments to control, to egoic thinking that we know how to improve the universe, and instead seeing it as sacred, opening to love, compassion, and kindness, and to help me meet what is with balance, with honor, and from this place of center. And so it is. Peace, peace, peace. So this, my friends, is a little glimpse into my equinox practices, and it's pretty close to the solstice one, except for it honors whichever rhythm we find ourselves experiencing more of at that time. I hope that this practice is helpful. I hope you make it your own and bring it to you throughout your each day, because these practices aren't just designed 4 times a year. We have these spaces of balance, of in between all the time. And can you bring it into your day, to your mornings, maybe the middle of the day, an evening time? Find a place where this practice of pause, reflection, allowing yourself to see that which is, see how you're approaching that, and asking, is there a way that would be more centered for me to engage in what is present for me right now? I hope that this is helpful, and I can't wait to hear how this beautiful equinox is going for you. Offering you light, love, and joy, Michelle Holling-Brooks. Thank you for listening to Soulful Practices. For more information on how to work directly with me or one of my guests, check out the show notes below. We'd love for you to also let us know what parts of this episode are speaking to you and how this practice is supporting you on your healing and spiritual journey. Please share this podcast with fellow seekers, travelers. Together, we can create a wave of soul-led beings in this world, offering you light, love, and joy on your journey. Michelle Holling-Brooks. Until next time.